Well, he's the lead lawyer in the horrific Jensen case out of Miles City. He's also former Democrat Congressional candidate John Heenan, joining us right here live on Montana Talks as we take you statewide from Glendive to Kalispell. John Heenan is the lead lawyer going after James Jensen, the former Miles City school athletic trainer accused of sexually assaulting potentially hundreds of boys. We're going to talk about that case, what it will take to hold Jensen to account for his crimes, and how the lawsuit helped bring this abuse to light. Plus, are there reforms that need to be made at the state level and in the state legislature? Again, John Heenan, thanks for being with us this morning here. First off, it was such a shocking case when it finally came to light, and it did. I think it raised a lot of fears across the state of people saying, wait, if that could happen in a great place like Miles City, what else is happening in schools elsewhere across Montana? If you can tell us, how did you first hear about this case, and what kind of work did it take to bring a case like this to light?
Yeah, so I guess, we're talking September, just a couple months ago, and I get contacted by my co-counsel, Dan Rice and Bryant Martin, and they're in Miles City, and they basically say, hey, this is, this case we want you to work on with us. And I mean, of course, I'm, it's shocking. It's almost too much to believe. And really, I mean, I tell you, in my world, you don't file cases just based on what somebody comes and tells you. I mean, I probably turn down, 98 out of 100 cases that people present because, you got to go investigate, do your research. But met with these guys, realized, oh my God, this is true. This is serious. And so we, what they had come at seeking legal counsel on was, because it all started with this Jensen sending Facebook requests to the victims.
Really?
And basically reaching out to them, which kind of, re-triggered the trauma. What's this about? And so one of the guys got mad when Jensen sent him a Facebook request, and he decided to do something about it and started pushing it, wondered how he could bring criminal charges. And we had to tell him, well, sadly under Montana law, because of the statute of limitations problem, doesn't look like there's a whole lot we can do. Let's move forward with a civil case, which is what we did. And then here as we sit now 3 months later, Jensen's behind bars on different charges, but two separate courts, and quite honestly, he's going to be living the rest of his life in jail behind bars, which is, I'd say on behalf of myself and all my clients and probably a lot of the people in Montana, a really good thing.
Yeah, that's great. That's the good news here because, yeah, that was the fear when this story first broke. So here, basically, if I recap this correctly, this doctor, I use air quotes because I don't think you'd want to describe him under a professional title, but he was the athletic trainer at the high school in Miles City. So he was the guy giving physicals to all these young boys at the school decades ago, and he basically used his role at the school to sexually assault these boys, and potentially hundreds? You're thinking hundreds of boys over the years, and because these details and these facts just came out now decades later due to statute of limitations, he basically couldn't be prosecuted for all of these crimes. But nonetheless, thanks to this lawsuit now, that forced the issue to the table, got the news out, and so authorities in the meantime started investigating this guy and kept those investigations going and came up with now child pornography, maybe other assault cases. What all else has this guy basically been doing in the meantime?
Yeah, I mean, so even after this lawsuit was filed, and this Jensen guy says, "Yeah, I did it," to the press when they called him after the lawsuit was filed, he continued to live right across the street from a middle school there in Miles City for weeks, months, and fortunately, the reason that he's behind bars now is because a home health care aide happened to look over his shoulder or see that he had child pornography on his computer, and so she didn't have a duty to report it, but she did the right thing. She reported it to law enforcement. They got a search warrant. They got his computer. Now he's up on those charges. Now federally he's been brought up on some of the stuff involving our clients and bringing them and coercing them to cross state lines. So he's right where he belongs. But I mean, where we're at now is, I mean, the school gave this guy, a pedophile, an office in the boys' locker room. They told the students he was a doctor, even though he was not a doctor. Had no qualifications as a trainer. And even when all these things came, there were all these concerns. What we now know is they just brushed it under the rug.
So, John, how did it stay so quiet for so long? What do you think happened there?
Well, when we started, we weren't really sure, but now we know a lot more. And quite honestly, I mean, we don't know everything because the school district's not telling us everything still. But what we do know is fairly shocking, and that's that, they investigated this Jensen back in 1997 based on, sounds like several different people had made allegations, and they had him sign a paper agreeing to stop giving children rub-downs and to stop having sleepovers at his home.
Jeez.
And they never let the parents know. They never let the community of Miles City know. And they allowed this guy to apparently quietly retire the next year. And, of all the things that really keep me awake at night, he continued to abuse these students at his house for months after he was let go of the school, because he presented it as, hey, I'm retired, but this will keep this program going, which is exactly the stuff for people that saw what happened at Penn State. That's exactly what Sandusky did with Penn State.
Yeah, and in particular, given, I'd imagine, the shame that was involved because of this particular type of sexual abuse and trauma, that probably prevented a lot of these young men at the time from speaking out, alerting the proper authorities, or telling a friend or a family member. And so therefore, because the word didn't get out, that probably made it also harder for this guy to be prosecuted.
Yeah, I mean, where I really, so I'm a father, I've got 4 kids, and words can't describe how livid I would be to not be told by my children's school what had happened and what they had uncovered. And so why the parents weren't alerted, I mean, even in 1997, if they would have stepped up and said, we're so sorry, this is what's happened, then the community could have started to deal with it. The victims could have sought counseling back then, not now. So it's just, why was it swept under the rug? Why didn't anyone deal with it back then? And again, it wasn't the 40s or 50s. Everyone knew in 1997. This was
the 90s, yeah.
Yeah, child molesters and pedophiles, they look for access to children, and those can be things like, churches, schools, anywhere where there's children. And so a school district who, we trust our children, we send them to school every day. Well, by God, they better take care of our kids and protect them from people like this.
Do you think that there could be problems at other schools across the state, but because for whatever reasons, maybe the lack of reporting on incidences in the schools, or schools trying to maybe cover up potentially bad information to protect their school's reputation? I guess are there protections in place to ensure that if stuff like this happens, that the word actually will get out, that it doesn't just get covered up?
Well, so a couple things. One is, our state law now is there's certain people that are mandatory reporters. They have to, if they're aware of circumstances of potential child abuse or child molestation, they have to report it to the police, and that's for obvious reasons. So ministers, teachers, doctors, they're mandatory reporters. For whatever reason, it doesn't look like any reporting happened here by this school district, but certainly I hope that other schools know those obligations. But one of the things that I really wanted to visit with you about is a great byproduct of this case is Jensen's behind bars. Another great byproduct of this case is that legislators, Republicans and Democrats, are coming together, and they're bringing Montana into the 21st century with respect to laws that protect children. And so one of those is, Montana is one of the few states where there's no prohibition on a teacher having sexual relations with a student.
Yeah, I was talking with